The table was set with my mom's good dishes, the white ones with the blue flowers around the rim that only came out for Thanksgiving and important dinners. I remember thinking it was strange that she'd gone to that trouble. My brother had only been back in town for 3 weeks. My dad cleared his throat before anyone had even touched the food. "We want to talk about the house," he said. I set down my fork. My brother, Colin, leaned back in his chair like he already knew how this was going to go. His girlfriend, Tessa, sat beside him, cutting her chicken into small, precise pieces without looking up. She'd moved in 2 weeks ago. Nobody had asked me about that either. "We've been thinking," my mom said, folding her hands on the table the way she does when she's rehearsed something, "that it might make more sense for Colin and Tessa to take the master bedroom. They need more space. And you," she smiled at me, that careful smile, "you could take the small room off the garage, just temporarily." The small room off the garage. The one with no closet. The one that still had boxes of Christmas decorations stacked against the wall and a window that faced directly into the neighbor's fence. "I've been in my room for 2 years," I said. "We know, sweetheart." My dad nodded like that was a reasonable response to what I'd just said. But Colin is getting back on his feet, and Tessa is, well, they're serious. They need space to build something. Colin finally looked at me. He didn't say sorry. He didn't say anything. He just reached for the bread basket. That was the moment I understood. Not just what they were asking, what they actually thought of me. I had moved back home at 29. I want to be clear about that up front, because I know how it sounds. 29, no husband, back in her childhood bedroom. I've heard the jokes. But the reason I came back was my dad's heart surgery. He needed someone for the first 3 months of recovery. My older sister lived in Portland with 3 kids and couldn't get away. My brother Colin? Well, Colin was figuring things out in Austin, which in practice meant he was bartending twice a week and sleeping until noon. So I came. I was a project coordinator at an engineering firm at the time. Remote work wasn't standard yet, but my manager let me work from home for 3 months, and those 3 months turned into something else entirely. My dad's recovery was harder than anyone expected. He had a second procedure in the spring. My mom, who had never driven on the highway alone in her life, was suddenly responsible for every appointment, every prescription, every insurance phone call. She was drowning. I stayed. I told myself it was temporary. I kept my apartment lease running for 4 months after I moved in, paying rent on a place I wasn't living in, just so I had an exit. When I finally let it go, I told myself I'd be out by the end of the year. That was 3 years ago. In those 3 years, I paid the electric bill every month. Not because they asked me to. I just started doing it and no one said anything, so I kept going. $2,400 a year just in electricity. I bought the new refrigerator when the old one quit. I paid to have the gutters replaced because my dad couldn't get on the ladder anymore, and my mom had gotten 3 different quotes and none of them seemed right to her. And finally, I just called someone and paid the $800 to make it stop being a conversation. I painted the living room. I reshingled the back porch roof with my neighbor Todd's help on a Saturday in October. I wasn't keeping track. I want to be honest about that too. I wasn't building a spreadsheet and waiting to present it. I was just living there, and when something needed doing, I did it, because that's what you do when you live somewhere. That's what you do for people you love. The problem was that they had started to see it differently. I didn't realize it until much later, until the dinner, actually. But somewhere along the way, my contributions had stopped being something they were grateful for and started being something they expected. The electric bill became my bill. The maintenance became my job. I had shifted in their minds from daughter to something closer to a tenant who also happened to do all the repairs. And tenants, it turns out, can be reassigned. Colin had shown up in February with 3 duffel bags, a guitar he hadn't played since 2019, and a vague story about a business opportunity that didn't pan out. I'd asked him once, carefully, what had happened in Austin. He said the restaurant he'd been working at closed. I asked if he had savings. He laughed. My parents were thrilled to have him home. My mom made his favorite dinner the first night. My dad watched football with him on the couch and looked happier than he had in months. I watched all of this, and I felt something uncomfortable that I didn't let myself name yet. It felt too small to name. He's their son. Of course, they were glad to have him home. Tessa arrived 12 days later. She was pretty in a way that photographed well. Warm on the surface. She hugged my mom when she met her, said the house was so cozy, asked my dad about his recovery with what seemed like genuine interest. She called me sweetie the second time she spoke to me, which I remember thinking was strange. We were the same age. She moved into Colin's room. Again, no conversation. I came home from work one Tuesday and there was a jade plant on the kitchen windowsill that I didn't recognize and 2 sets of shoes by the front door instead of 1. The first month was fine. I worked. I made dinner a couple of times a week. I tried to be welcoming, asked Tessa questions, attempted to learn her as a person. She worked remotely, she said, for a marketing firm. She was vague about the details in a way that I noticed but didn't press. What I did notice, she never once offered to split a bill. She used the streaming services I paid for without asking. She filled her car with gas from my dad's account twice before he said anything, and when he brought it up, gently, she laughed it off as an accident and then did it a third time. Small things. The kind of things you can't point to without sounding petty. I went to my parents once early on. I sat at the kitchen table and I said, carefully, I'm not sure I know enough about Tessa. Has Colin told you much about her? Where she's from? What she actually does? My mom said, she's sweet. Don't be so suspicious. My dad said Colin was happy, and that mattered. I let it go. 3 weeks before the dinner, Colin asked to borrow my car. I had a 4-year-old Subaru, paid off, in good shape. I kept it clean and I was careful with it. He asked to borrow it for a couple of hours to run errands because his car was in the shop. I said okay. That was a Saturday morning. He brought it back Sunday evening. There was a dent on the rear passenger door. Small, but there. When I asked about it, he said he hadn't noticed it. When I pushed, he said it must have been there already. I knew it hadn't been. I had a photo on my phone from the week before, from when I'd taken it through the car wash and the door was clean. I showed him the photo. He shrugged. I don't know what to tell you. I went to my parents. My dad said, he'll make it right, just give him some time. My mom said accidents happen and she was sure Colin felt terrible. Colin, from the other room, said nothing. I paid for the repair myself. $460. While I was waiting for the estimate at the body shop, sitting in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights, I thought about the refrigerator and the gutters and the electricity and the porch roof, and I felt something solidify in my chest. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. The night before the dinner, Tessa asked if she could use my laptop. She said hers was acting up. I hesitated. Something in me hesitated, and then I said sure. Just leave it on the kitchen table when you're done. She left it on my bed instead. The browser was still open. I don't know what I expected when I looked, maybe just her email or some shopping site. But what I saw was a credit application, not for a card. For a personal loan. $20,000. In my mother's name. The application was half filled out. My mother's social security number was in the form. I sat on my bed for a long time. I took a photo of the screen. Then I closed the laptop and I went downstairs and I made tea and I sat at the kitchen table in the quiet house and I thought about what to do. I thought about going straight to my parents that night. I thought about calling Colin in. I thought about saying nothing and watching to see what happened next. I decided I would tell them at dinner. I would bring it up calmly with the photo and give them the chance to see it themselves before anything was submitted. I was still trying to protect them. Even then, the table looked nice. My mom always made it look nice. The blue flower dishes, the good candles, the centerpiece with dried flowers she'd gotten from the farmer's market last fall. It was the kind of setting that made you feel like things were fine. That was probably the point. My dad's announcement about the bedroom came during the first course. I sat with it for a moment. The small room off the garage. I looked at Colin, who wasn't looking at me. I looked at Tessa, who was cutting her chicken. I looked at my mom's carefully arranged smile and my dad's careful eyes, and I understood that they had already decided. This was not a discussion. This was a notification. I need to show you something first, I said. I got up and got my phone. I pulled up the photo and I set it on the table in front of my dad, then turned it so my mom could see. That's a loan application, I said, in Mom's name, with her social security number. I found it open on my laptop last night. The table went quiet in a way that felt different from silence. It had weight. My mom looked at the photo. Then she looked at Tessa. Tessa set down her fork. That's not what it looks like. Then tell me what it looks like, I said. She looked at Colin. Colin looked at the table. I was looking into options, Tessa said. For us, for Colin and me. We need to get on our feet, and I was exploring. I didn't submit it. You had my mother's social security number in a loan application? I was going to ask her. You were going to ask her, I repeated. My mom said, quietly, Tessa, is that true? Tessa's expression shifted into something I hadn't seen before. Still composed, but different. Like a room where someone had just rearranged the furniture and nothing was quite where you remembered it. She said something about how it was a misunderstanding, how she'd been trying to help, how this family didn't appreciate how much pressure she and Colin were under. My dad looked at Colin. Colin finally spoke. It's not a big deal, he said. It was just an idea. It's fraud, I said. Using someone else's credit without their consent is fraud. I looked it up. Nobody submitted anything. Not yet. The dinner fell apart after that. Not loudly. There was no screaming, no dishes thrown. It was more like a slow deflation. My mom kept touching the centerpiece. My dad asked Colin, twice, to look at him. Tessa excused herself from the table and didn't come back. Colin sat there with the expression of someone who had been counting on a floor that had just turned out to be a rug. At the end of it, after Tessa had gone upstairs and Colin had followed and my parents sat across from me in the wreckage of the good dishes and the dried flower centerpiece, my dad said, "We just need some time to sort through this." My mom looked at me and said, "You didn't have to do it like this." I thought about the car, the refrigerator, the gutters, the electricity. 3 years of doing it like this, quietly, without making a scene, and where had that gotten me? The garage room, I said. I think I'm gonna move out. I didn't say it dramatically. I wasn't trying to punish them. I said it the way you say something you have already, somewhere, known for a while. It came out calm. My mom started to speak and I said, gently, "Not tonight, I'm going to go to bed, but I think it's time." I went upstairs. I could hear Tessa and Colin talking in low voices through the wall. I lay on my bed and looked at the ceiling and felt, for the first time in a long time, like I could breathe correctly. I spent the next week looking for apartments. I told no one, not because I was hiding it, but because it didn't require an audience. I found a one-bedroom in a building 20 minutes from work on the 3rd floor, with a window in the kitchen that faced a courtyard with a maple tree. The rent was $1,400 a month. I had the savings for first and last and a deposit. I had been contributing to my parents' household for 3 years instead of spending money on myself, and the strange thing was that because of that restraint, I now had enough to leave. I gave notice at the end of the week. I told my parents I'd found a place and I'd be out by the 1st of the month. My mom cried. My dad said he understood. Neither of them said anything about the loan application. Neither of them said anything about the guest room conversation. Neither of them said they were sorry. On my last Saturday there, I went through the house and collected the things that were mine. My tools from the garage, the good knife I'd bought for the kitchen because the old ones were dull, the smart thermostat I'd installed the previous winter. My mom watched me take the thermostat off the wall and said, "Is that really necessary?" I thought about it. Yes, I said. Colin and Tessa were not there that day. They had left 2 days earlier, apparently. I found this out from my mom, who mentioned it as if it were a minor scheduling detail. They had packed up while I was at work on Thursday and were gone by the time I got home. No goodbye. No explanation. My dad said Colin had texted him. I looked at my mom. Did she submit the loan application? She was quiet for a moment. "The bank called us," she said. "Your father handled it." I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't need to. I could see it in her face, which was older suddenly and smaller. I had been trying to tell them about Tessa for 2 months. They had told me not to be suspicious. I didn't say any of that. I put the thermostat in my box and I carried it out to my car. My apartment smells like fresh paint and the maple tree on the right days, when the window is open. I furnished it slowly on weekends, which I have back now. I bought a couch I picked out myself. I bought plants, 4 of them, and I have not killed a single one. I cook dinner at whatever time I feel like it, and I do not explain this to anyone. My dad called 3 weeks after I left. He said they had worked things out with the bank. There had been a small charge on my mom's credit card, not the loan, something else. Apparently, Tessa had managed to do something before they caught it. He said they were pursuing it. He said he was sorry for how the room conversation had gone. His voice was quiet, and I believed him, and also it did not undo the 3 years before it. I said, "I love you, Dad, but I think I needed to do this." He said, "I know." My mom texted me the following week. It was a long text, and I read it twice, and it had the word sorry in it several times. I thought about responding the same day. I decided to wait, not to punish her, just because I needed time to figure out what I actually wanted to say, rather than what I would have said 3 years ago, when I was still trying so hard to be the good one. I wrote back eventually. I said I loved her, and that I needed some space, and that I hoped we could rebuild something slowly. I meant all of it. Colin has not reached out. I have not reached out to Colin. That particular door is open, technically, but I'm not standing at it. Someone told me once, a therapist, briefly, years ago, that the hardest thing about leaving a situation that isn't working isn't believing. It's the period before, when you already know it isn't working, but you keep trying to fix it anyway, because leaving feels like failure and staying feels like loyalty, and you can't quite see yet that those aren't the same thing. I stayed for 3 years. I paid bills that were not mine to pay. I repaired things. I gave warnings that went ignored. I showed up, quietly, for every hard thing, and none of it was counted in the moments that apparently mattered. I used to be angry about that. Some days I still am. A little, around the edges, but mostly what I feel now, when I water my plants in the morning before work, when I make coffee in my own kitchen and listen to the maple tree outside, is something that took me a long time to call by its right name. It's relief. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since I moved out. Not in a dramatic way, more like the way you think about something when you finally have quiet enough to think it all. I sit in my apartment now, the one with the maple tree outside the kitchen window, and I trace the line backward. Every choice has a weight to it. Every ignored warning, every bill paid in silence, every moment I told myself, they'll come around, all of it added up to something. Not punishment, just consequence. The world doesn't punish people for being careless with the ones who love them. It just eventually runs out of the people willing to absorb it. Tessa didn't appear from nowhere. She found a family that had already learned to take someone for granted. To treat generosity as infrastructure, something you use without thinking about, like electricity. She just plugged in. That's the part that took me the longest to understand. I used to think she was the problem. She wasn't the origin of it. She was just the last thing to arrive before the whole structure showed itself for what it was. I think about who I was when I moved back home at 29. I was a person who believed that showing up quietly and doing the hard things without making a fuss was a form of love, and it is. But I had confused love with erasure. I had made myself so easy to overlook that they eventually did. That's not anyone else's fault entirely. I handed them the habit. I kept showing up, kept fixing things, kept absorbing small cruelties without naming them, because naming them felt like making trouble, and I had spent my whole life not wanting to make trouble. The thermostat is in my apartment now. I smile at it sometimes, which probably looks strange, but it represents something. It was the first thing I took back that was actually mine, and I almost didn't take it because I was still, right up until the end, trying not to make anyone uncomfortable. That's the thing about spending years shrinking yourself. It doesn't stop the moment you decide to stop. It lingers. You have to practice taking up space again. You have to practice saying, "This is mine," and not flinching. Colin never called. I don't say that with bitterness anymore. Mostly, I say it like a weather report. It's information about who he is, not a verdict on who I am. I tried for a long time to be the sibling who held things together. I sent the texts. I smoothed the conversations. I made excuses for him with my parents when it would have been more honest to say, "I don't know why he does what he does." Letting go of the role of family peacekeeper is its own kind of work. Quiet, unglamorous, necessary. What I know now is this: integrity isn't the loud thing. It's not the confrontation at the dinner table, though sometimes that's part of it. It's the smaller, slower decision to stop participating in your own diminishment. It's recognizing that you can love people and also refuse to be used by them. It's understanding that walking away isn't weakness. It's the moment you finally decide your own life is worth protecting. I'm still learning that. Some mornings it feels obvious. Some mornings it doesn't. But I'm here, in my own space, with my plants and my thermostat and my window, and for the first time in years, I feel like I'm building something that actually belongs to me. That's not nothing. That's, quietly, everything.